Good evening, and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Town Council of September 28th. If you'd kindly rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, the only announcements I have are the following meetings. Upcoming regular council meetings, October 12th, Thursday, October 12th, Thursday, October 26th, 7 p.m., both here in the Matthew Thornton Room. The council will be meeting on the first and third Thursdays in the months of November and December, which are November 2nd at 7 p.m. and Thursday, November 16th at 7 p.m. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Come join Merrimack Parks and Recreation this Saturday, September 30th at Wasserman Park for their final free movie night of the year. They'll be showing the movie Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. It will begin at 6:30 p.m. There will be free popcorn available for the movie, and that is sponsored by the Merrimack Lions Club and Xfinity. If you have any questions, please contact Merrimack Parks and Rec at 603-882-1046. Supervisors of the checklist session for voter registration, party, name, and/or address changes and deletions will be held tonight, Thursday, September 28th from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the Merrimack Town Hall, and Friday, October 6th, 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. This is the last time you can change party affiliations prior to the presidential primary. Amherst Road will be closed to all traffic between Amherst Town Line, County Road, and Severance Bridge Road for emergency bridge repairs. The closure will begin October 10th and run to the end of November. Please seek alternate routes. The long-awaited Sauhegan River Trail project will begin construction the first week in November. The groundbreaking ceremony is scheduled to be on November 3rd at 10 a.m. The last two hazardous waste collections will be held Saturday, October 7th, and Saturday, November 4th at 9 Stadium Drive in Nashua at the DOT 25 Crown Street, Nashua. The original site will be occupied for the foreseeable future. Merrimack residents can bring their recyclables for $15 up to 10 gallons or 20 pounds of waste. Additional charges of $1 per gallon, about 20 over 10 gallons, and 50 cents per pound over 20 pounds. Cash and check is accepted, and that's all they will accept is cash or check. Please make checks payable to NRSWMD. And finally, bear with me, this is a long one. The New Hampshire Secretary of State is proud to partner with Vet the Vote, a nonprofit organization that recruits veterans to volunteer as poll workers during elections. To encourage New Hampshire veterans to serve as poll workers in their communities, especially during the upcoming presidential primary, the Secretary of State's office is hosting a public event with Vet the Vote and Merrimack moderator Lynn Christensen on Saturday, October 7th, between the hours of 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. at James Massacola Upper Elementary School, 26 Babuzik Lake Road, in the all-purpose room. During the event, veterans and other interested members of the public will have the opportunity to walk through a mock polling place set up for Election Day. New Hampshire election officials, many of them veterans, will explain the process to the participants each step of the way and answer any questions about the election's work in New Hampshire. Vet the Vote gives New Hampshire veterans the opportunity to continue to serve their country and local communities by participating in the election process. Attendees will get the first-hand look of how elections in New Hampshire are run and why the Granite State has one of the highest voter turnout rates in the country. New Hampshire veterans who are interested in attending should arrive anytime between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. Our media department media are highly encouraged to attend between 10 and 10:30 a.m. Veterans and members of the public who plan to attend the event should register using the following link by 10 a.m. on October 6, 2023. www.ehpn.gov eventsquid.com/event, event/21636. And this will be up on our website. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Comments from the press or public? If you'd like to address the council, you can do so by stepping to the table here or the mic over on the side. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to recognitions, resignations, and retirements. The council's to present a certificate to Neil Anketel for his volunteer service to the town of Merrimack on the planning board. Let me see. Oh, wait. Is Robert here? Yeah. I didn't know Bob Bass.
I don't see Bob Bass.
I met Neil, gosh, 15 years ago, for the first time.
Yeah.
And he's been very active in the community, of course, running our 4th of July celebration.
The Midway?
Numerous years, the Midway, and
7.
7 years, was it?
Just about, yeah.
Recently slowed down on that and has decided to take his nights off from the planning board to have some peace and relaxation, I'm sure. But,
Yeah, we'll see.
So Neil, this is, I'd like to read this for everybody.
Sure.
It's presented to Neil Anketel in recognition of his service as a member of the planning board. In recognition of your dedication and commitment to public service during your appointment as a member of the planning board, your service and devotion to the planning board had a valuable effect upon this community. We wish to extend our sincere appreciation for your outstanding performance and duty, March 2018 to September 2023. Thank you. Thank you. Do you want me to take this? If you want me to take it and get it finished up?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. I can
Barbara
stop it.
Healy has been excused for this evening's meeting, and that's a signature we're lacking. So we'll
Okay.
do that, but very good. But
No
Liz,
worries. Thank you.
I have also he's gonna be missed on the planning board. We love having his perspective, which is different than, actually, we all have different perspectives. But I have reminded him that we do still have vacancies, so if he changes his mind,
Right.
we would welcome him back as well as anybody else.
Why, thank you.
thanks, Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you.
Neil, thanks a lot for your service. We really appreciate it. You came to the board when I was serving as a town council member, and I appreciate your input and all of the things that you've had to do to offer for it. So, hate to see you go.
For the education.
Thanks. Thank you.
Becky will give you a call when that's ready, Neil. Next item on the agenda is the council to present a recognition award to Paul Ford in recognition of his retirement from the Solid Waste Division of the Public Works Department after more than 20 years of full-time service to the town. Where's Paul? There he is. Is it?
We're doing family hall.
Super. Good evening. So when I was first asked to say a few words about Paul tonight, I couldn't help but reflect upon when I first started with the town of Merrimack a little over 4 years ago. I was more than a little apprehensive about my new position in a new town with an entirely new group of people. Prior to that, I spent the last 15 years working at a close-knit group close by, and frankly, the change was scary. As I was being introduced to the team, I remember Paul being referred to as the mayor. At the time, I laughed it off as a good-natured rib among longtime coworkers, and as time passed by, I've gotten to know Paul more and more. I can't help but consider this good-natured rib a sincere term of endearment. When you consider some of the qualities one looks for in a mayor, you can't help but think of the qualities such as charismatic, good-natured, friendly, approachable, and kind. A true man of the people. If this doesn't describe Paul Ford, I don't know what does. Paul is a loving husband, father, grandfather, and friend to many. I like to think I fall into that latter. Paul, I've thoroughly enjoyed working with you, and I thank you for all of your help and guidance as I've grown into my role. please let me be one of the first to congratulate you on a well-deserved retirement. I thank you for your years of service to the town of Merrimack, and I thank you for your friendship.
Look at the look on his face.
I had the privilege and the task of working with Paul at the transfer station for over 10 years. What Rick just said about his friendliness, his help, his awareness of what it takes to be positive dealing with the public that comes to the transfer station was unparalleled. And I want to personally thank Paul. He probably doesn't remember, but my daughter created a crisis for herself by throwing the wrong trash bag away one morning. And Paul and I believe Ian, above their knees deep, my daughter was fortunate enough to kind of sort of remember the general area in which she'd thrown a bag, but they retrieved it. She's never forgotten it. I've never forgotten it. And it's just one very small example of the dedication and the concern for the public that the employees of the transfer station exemplify daily. Paul, thank you, and it's been a privilege to have been a co-worker of yours.
Thank you so much.
This is a plaque for Paul for all his hard work. It's presented to Paul Ford upon the occasion of your retirement in recognition of the loyal and dedicated full-time service which you've contributed for more than 20 years to the town of Merrimack and the Solid Waste Division of the Public Works Department. Your dedication and devotion to duty has been a tremendous asset to the town of Merrimack. We wish to extend to you our sincere appreciation for your outstanding performance of duty, June 8th, 2003 to August 1st, 2023.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. Thank you. Appreciate it. I personally want to thank the town for allowing me to come here 20 years ago and work. When I turned 50 years old, that's when I was hired. And goes to show you that, you know, I never thought at 50 I'd ever get hired again to do another, you know, full-time job. But I want to make a special thank you to Sharon. You've been a great help to me the last couple of years. Thank you. So, it's Paul. Been a pleasure knowing you. I'm gonna miss the people in the town because like they said, they called me the mayor because I would always meet people. I met hundreds and hundreds of people in the town, and I've been great to them, and they've been great to me. You know, and it's been a pleasure servicing them. But
You gonna miss it?
I'm gonna miss it. I'm gonna miss it. Oh. Well, listen, thank you again. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. I'll see you.
Okay, next on the agenda, the council was to present a recognition to Becky Starkey in recognition of her retirement from the Merrimack Public Works Administration after more than 40 years of full-time service to the town. Yeah, gosh, from June 27th of 83 to September 29th, 2023. Did I say 1983?
I don't know, but I was stuck
For
on
40
40
years,
so-
yes. And Becky isn't able to be here this evening, but she'll be getting a rocking chair, which is actually being manufactured as we speak. And yeah, it doesn't say, but there's an engravement that will be on it. I'm not sure what that says, but that's a lot of years, and
Sure
and
is.
there was a
Wow.
lot of history that just retired. So,
Huge amount of knowledge. Yeah.
Yep. All right.
So thank you to Becky.
Yes. What I'd like to do without objection is move item number 5 under new business rather, up to right now, and that's council to consider the appointment of the following, of Lon Woods to the Heritage Commission pursuant to Charter Article 4, Section 8, without objection. So Lon Woods sat on the Heritage Commission for a number of years. I can't even remember how many, and has on his retirement from the town council has wanted to stay involved, and is going to do that now as a citizen, if you all agree, and I suspect. But so, what is the pleasure of the council?
You wanna go ahead?
I will make a motion to approve Lon Woods to the Heritage Commission as a full member.
Second.
Motion by Mackenzie, second by Nancy. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? 6-0-0. And Lon, if you could step up over here once again.
You know the routine.
Does he need an ethics thing? 'Cause I normally have it, so.
From the other committee.
All right, if you raise your right hand and repeat after me, I, Lon Woods,
I, Lon Woods,
do solemnly swear and sincerely swear
do solemnly swear and sincerely swear
that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform,
that I will faithfully
and impartially,
and impartially discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent upon me
all the duties incumbent upon me
as a full member of
As
the
a-
Heritage Commission,
as a full member of the Heritage Commission,
according to the best of my abilities,
according to the best of my abilities,
agreeably to the rules and regulations
agreeably to the rules and regulations
of this Constitution and the laws of the state of New Hampshire.
of the Constitution and the laws of the state of New
So
Hampshire.
help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Because I didn't mention it from the table here, once again, Barbara Healy has been excused from this evening's meeting. Okay, next on the agenda under appointments, the Town of Merrimack, per the Charter, Article 6, Section 6, Article 6, Section 6, at least annually, there should be a meeting to review the zoning board of adjustment. This agenda item is to highlight the board's significant actions, current projects, anticipated actions, and to raise any concerns the council should know about or act upon. So, Rich Kneskew's here. Thank you.
Usually I'm the one reminding everyone to turn the.
It
And I,
is weird.
and I
isn't
still
it?
forget. Good evening.
Good evening. I'd say nothing has really changed from last year with the exception of the members of the zoning board. Rod Buckley has stepped down from the zoning board, and in his place, Ben Niles is now the vice chair. We do have a new member and a new new alternate. So we are now officially at only having one opening left on the board, which is good because for the last several years, especially since the beginning of the pandemic, it's been really tough keeping people on the board or filling positions on the board. So, but did you want to add anything, Ben? Okay. What questions do you guys have?
Do you usually have some data like how many, I don't want to say cases, but how many
Hearings.
hearings have you had and what are the types of hearings and
So I will say
requests?
that in the past, we have been provided with metrics. When I asked for that information, what I received was not metrics. So I am flying by the seat of my pants. However, I will say that this particular year has been very similar to the last maybe 2 years in terms of your typical people building a garage, businesses looking for the ability to operate, just simple things like businesses operating in industrial, and a few instances where people wanted mixed use, not planning board mixed use, but the ability to, for example, business and residential, residential and commercial, that type of stuff. So I would say that there really has been nothing memorable from this past year, other than it's been a little bit of the same stuff that we're used to. So
if you were to guess, and we won't hold you to the number because I
Sure.
know, what would be your approval, disapproval kind of ratio? I'm just curious because that in the past has been reported and it seems to be increasingly
it is.
changing.
Yeah, I would say it's the approvals are probably in the variance. I'm assuming you're talking about variance specifically.
Correct. Yeah.
Probably around 85%. We have not rejected a single special exception in years, so those are normally handouts. And I would say that we do have a firm history of denying appeals, although from time to time there's a good reason to accept one.
Yeah.
We have accepted a rehearing in our last meeting, but that again is not something that we normally do. So I would say that in terms of our approval rate, you're absolutely right. We do have we typically do hand out variances, especially given the difficulties of proving and disproving unnecessary hardship. But other than that, from my recollection, I wouldn't say that this is any different than the last 2 or 3 years in terms of the types of variances that we're getting or our approval rate.
Okay.
Well, if I could add, most of the variances are kind of minor, so it has to deal with setback requirements in an existing residential property. Sometimes it's a lot and building situation which predated our zoning. So most of those, we listen to the abutters and to their support or objection, but most of those are quite minor and tend to pass, especially if the abutters are supportive of it as well. One thing that came to mind for me was where there was a small parcel of land, and I'm going to say it was like 3 or 5 acres, and they wanted to put a huge number of apartments, 4-story, in abutting residential properties a little further off of DW Highway, and the zoning allowed or required for residential, let's say minimum half-acre lot size, and they wanted on 4 or 5 acres to put up 20 units or something. which to me was unacceptable given the zoning code that's been established and, you know, the manner in which the planning department goes about to set for orderly development of real estate in the town of Merrimack. So it's something that is way out left field, does not receive quick, broad support by the zoning board of adjustment for the obvious reason. It doesn't fit. And you could say that it would be a rather ugly precedent, because if we allowed that density on a tiny site in that part of Merrimack, then, you know, what's the basis for denying the next one, which has an excessive number of units? So we do run into one or two of those a year, and they get reviewed in great depth to see if it's appropriate development for that site.
Tom?
Can you, you mentioned special exceptions and variances, just for the general public. Can you give us a brief description of the difference between those two? You seem to say special exceptions tend to get approved.
Yeah, so a special exception is almost the opposite of a variance. It's an acceptable use of land, but there have to be certain bullets depending on the type of special exception that's being applied for, where the petitioner has to be able to state that they meet the criteria. And I'm trying to think of a good example of a special exception, but off the top of my head, I can't think of anything great. And the criteria usually vary from special exception to special exception, as opposed to the variance, which is the 5 points of law to essentially enable a petitioner to break one of our ordinances. Specifically, the majority of those being exactly what Ben just mentioned, which are setback requirements. In the 80s, we put all these setback requirements in place that very few of the properties in this town actually meet by default. So, you know, when you have people looking to build a garage within a certain portion of their property, they wind up hitting into setbacks because of either the way the soil was classified on a map or the way the property is divided out. A lot of times people are looking to build garages in places that might where they have to put it in a certain place because of their septic system. And, you know, they would not have to come up for a variance if they simply dug their entire septic up and, you know, replumbed their property. But for the $30,000-$40,000 they'd spend doing that, it's just easier for them to come in and get a variance.
So I guess I'm not understanding what a special exception is if it's not a variance.
So a special exception means the petitioner has the right to do what they're looking to do, as long as they get the approval from the zoning board that they've met a list of criteria. And those criteria will vary depending on the special exception.
An exception to what?
You know, I'd have to be looking at one of our more recent special exceptions to really get into that.
Bob's,
Might-
he's coming
might
to
be
the
able get some
rescue.
help from our planning and zoning administrator. I mean to get you on the spot. I'm just.
No, it's actually a good question. I just really can't think of an appropriate answer.
As Rich was saying, a special exception is considered a permitted use in the zoning ordinance, but unlike a variance, which has criteria based in law that are a very high bar to get over, special exceptions are very general criteria that, for example, is it going to cause undue noise, dust, pollution? Is it going to cause undue traffic in the neighborhood? Is it a fit in the general character of the neighborhood? It's a very low bar to achieve. It's basically the point of it is to create an extra level of eyes just to look at it like, yeah, okay, this works out, and we can go to the planning board with it.
But it's permitted in the zone already.
Technically, it's permitted by special exception, so it's not outright permitted. They just have to get
They have to
the
ask for it.
ZBA
special.
blessing, right?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Rich, I was wondering, you had said you're going to have a rehearing, I believe, was it an appeal? Or you said one's going to be coming up.
Yeah, so there's a petition where the petitioner actually felt that I did not conduct the meeting in a certain way. I had actually encouraged the board to grant this rehearing. Although I personally am not sure that I agree with the petitioner, I still think that if the question is that they felt that I could have conducted the hearing differently, then I would like that ability to do that.
Well, because that was my question. If,
Yeah.
let's say that they find that it wasn't, the procedures weren't followed properly, does that mean it's going back for another hearing, or what does that mean? in the
Oh,
end?
so what we're going to do is basically rehear the testimony. We're
Okay.
just going to redo the case.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. I didn't know if that would happen automatically, or if that petition would cause that to happen, even though it was only on procedures. So that,
Yeah, and I actually mentioned in the hearing that I personally don't think the outcome will be changed based on the rehearing at all.
Yeah.
However, I personally also want to see the rehearing take place because at least we're doing our due diligence. So it's more of a following process than, trying to determine outcome from the hearing.
Sure. Nope. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Does anybody have anything further for Richard Ben? Nope. Thank you, gentlemen. It seemed like
you
it was
for your
last
time.
week, but we'll see you next year, which will seem like 3 days. I'm sure. But
Thank you
thanks for
guys
your
very
time.
much.
Thank you very much.
Years enough.
Yeah. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing. The council to hold a hearing to consider the proposed zoning ordinance amendments to repeal section 2.02.4.d, mixed-use developments permitted in the I-1 district by conditional use permit pursuant to Charter Article 5.
Mr. Chair, as I've done in the past, I'll be recusing myself off the audience.
Thank you, Nance. What the council has done is we've had a desire to remove the conditional use permit part of the zoning, and our desire is to have the master plan take a look at this and have it all incorporated as that approaches. Paul, did you?
All I wanted to add is that then we also re-lettered
Oh, yes.
the remaining sections of the ordinance to properly flow. The A, B, C, D, G, H, and I. So that was the other change. Renumbered, re-lettered the area, but yes. So basically, we are repealing that section, which is section D of the section 2.02.4, letter D, mixed use developments permitted. We're repealing that section of the ordinance.
Okay, does anybody have any?
You're going to open the public hearing?
I was going to, I didn't know if we had anything up here right now. Seeing on this is a public hearing, and at 7:34, I'll open the public hearing. If anybody would like to address the council, you can feel free to sit here or stand there, whatever you're comfortable with.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, members of the town council. My name is Morgan Hollis. I'm an attorney at Gottesman and Hollis at 39 East Pearl Street in Nashua. And I'm here this evening representing Merrimack Parcel A LLC and speaking in opposition on their behalf. To begin with, those of you on the council that may not have followed some recent planning board decisions, I feel I may have played a somewhat instrumental role in where we are today and why we're here today, and why there's a proposal with regard to this ordinance. So I think it's relevant to give a little peek into the history, which is my client received a variance for a mixed-use development in an I-2 district. It's not permitted in the I-2 district. It's not permitted by either conditional use or any other methodology. It had to be permitted by a variance. It was permitted by a variance subject to the planning board granting a conditional use permit, meaning it had to find all of the criteria that would have been found to grant a conditional use permit for mixed use in an I-1 district. So they looked at what the request was at the zoning board, how many units they wanted for residential, et cetera, and the zoning board granted it, but turned it over to the planning board to follow the conditional use permit process as if it were in the I-1. So years later, a conditional use permit was granted. They found all the criteria, all the necessary requirements were met, that is they, the planning board, and it was granted. And years later, as years went by, the applicant needed to revise that, came in with an amendment made some minor modifications, and then came forward with a more significant amendment, which essentially doubled the residential numbers, residential unit numbers, and reduced significantly the commercial numbers. With that, they were directed to go back to the zoning board because it was a big change from the variance that had been granted. Once again, variance was granted subject to the planning board finding that all requirements under the CUP, which only applied to I-1 districts, were met. So moving that forward, over a course of a year and a half, the process developed that the planning board thought that the proposed number of residential units was too much, too dense. The town staff felt that it did not meet the requirements of the PUD density. There was a lot of debate and discussion. I offered an opinion that this was governed by the variance and by the CUP criteria, but not by the PUD ordinance. To make a long story short, the zoning board evaluated the application, sort of negotiated the number of residential units down with the applicant, and then proceeded to go through the criteria. They cited essentially two sections, one of which was what I'll refer to as Section 4E, and I'm going to speak about that in a minute, but Section 4E allows the planning board to either increase or decrease the density as they see fit under certain criteria. And then so that was number one citation that they relied upon. And then number two was it met all the criteria that it had to meet. And they spent a considerable amount of time going through the criteria. And as a result, a CUP was granted. An amendment to the original CUP was granted. I think that raised a lot of people's concerns because they were unhappy with the results for whatever reason. But remember, and I just want the council to remember, because I think this is important for you all to know, this is a one-off situation. This one circumstance is a one-off situation because the whole CUP mixed-use development that is the subject of this controversy was a variance. It was not a mixed use under your zoning ordinance. It was a variance which attached to it conditions of you must find that the CUP conditions are met. And that's what rolled into the discussion of, okay, what's the density? It's not really governed by the PUD, plus we have flexibility to move it up or down. So having given that background, I have 4 comments essentially. If the section is deleted, any development within the I-1 district proposing a mixed use must go to the ZBA for variance. So you've essentially wiped out what this town thought was a good planning tool of allowing mixed use to proceed forward under the control of the planning board. And when you think back in history, this all evolved because zoning has traditionally been, you have residential, you have commercial, and you have industrial, and never the twain shall meet. Well, we all know what has transpired in life. People want to live, work, play at the same general area. People will live, they want to be close to where they work, they want to be close to where they can dine, where they can shop, etc. So Merrimack was in the forefront of this creative mixed-use planning tool, and that's how they came up with this ordinance, and they assigned it to the I-1 district. If you remove this CUP, there will be no CUP criteria, so there will be no mixed use in your town. Anyone who wants to do anything other than the ancient historical zoning, residential, commercial, industrial, that's what's permitted. Anyone who wants to do anything creative has to go to the zoning board. You've heard what the zoning board handles on a general rule. You're now asking the zoning board to take up the very complicated issue of how do these uses work? We don't have any criteria to say what's good, what's bad, and how is this going to play out? So that's number one reason that this gets tossed to the zoning board. This is not really the proper place for it. That's not what the zoning board does. It's a quasi-judicial board that measures variances by 5 legal criteria. Number 2, if it's deleted, the new paragraph states that the existing mixed use become essentially non-conforming uses, and any change has to meet the underlying zoning density requirements. Well, if you have a mixed use and you have residential and they want to make a change, the underlying zoning is I-1. There is no density situation under an I-1 for residential use because there's no residential allowed in I-1. So there'll be no change. Once again, we're going back to the zoning board, not to the planning board, to evaluate under all the criteria they have. The third comment is RSA 674-39 protects developments that have been under construction, substantial startup work done, from any changes that would modify an existing zoning ordinance. So arguably, any approval that's already out there that wants to come in and make a modification would proceed back to the planning board to amend their CUP under RSA 674-39. So your ordinance, if you're trying to freeze everything, I would argue may not be effective. Number four, if in fact 674-39 doesn't apply, then again, you have these existing projects that were approved under a provision of your ordinance, which said, you know, as you develop these projects, and they're over a long period of time, as you know, mixed-use projects are not like 5 units and 5,000 square feet. They have to be a fairly large acreage in size, a fairly large number of square footage. So it takes time. What happens is you get financing, and part of the financing is when you review what the zoning ordinance is there some flexibility, because it will be years, and as years go by, we need to have some flexibility to make amendments to the CUP. And there's a provision for that in your ordinance. So financing for these projects is in place on the basis of that. Now you're telling these lenders, sorry, if you have to make any change for any reason, as the development matures and you need to move here or move there, you don't go back to the planning board. You have to go to the zoning board, which, as I've said, is not really the body. This is going to throw the financing situation into a tumbled mess. So those are the 4 major observations. I think it's relevant, though, and I apologize for taking a lot of time, but it's pretty important. That said, I understand the concern over the mixed use. I mean, I was here, I heard it, and I understand it. It's not specifically defined by categories. It's not so many percent for commercial, so many for residential, so many for industrial. However, I also understand there's some concern that the planning board could move it up or down as they saw fit, and that's what maybe caused some dissatisfaction. Removing the ordinance in its entirety, which is a well-conceived, well-thought-out, and other than the unique situation that I was pleased to be a part of, maybe not so much for some people, but it has worked. It has worked for this town, and it's allowed the planning board to do what they should do, which is have criteria, think about the impacts of the town, ask for the traffic studies, have analysis of the sewer, the water, all the impacts. That is gone away. And it's gone away, in my opinion, for only one reason, and that is the issue of, does the planning board have this authority under what I call Section 4E? What is the mixed-use development CUP criteria? Those of you who don't sit on the planning board and haven't been to a planning board meeting and maybe haven't followed it, it's important to understand what it is. The ordinance spells out the requirements, including the minimum size, minimum service of water, minimum frontage requirements, and only in certain areas and certain roadways can it be done. It spells out the types of mixed use of I-1 permitted uses, C2 permitted uses, elderly uses, elderly housing uses, and residential uses as permitted in the PU district. Public and private open space for submittals, including, and it requires a submittal including a master site plan. It spells out dimensional requirements for uses in lots, including the residential density requirement, and it ties it to the PUD. But it has an out clause, which again is the focus of my speech here tonight. The planning board may, in its sole discretion, require more or less stringent dimensional requirements than those referenced above to facilitate the integration and connection between mixed-use areas being developed and to provide reasonable buffering and separation between uses. It's an out clause. It's allowing the planning board to see what they see and make adjustments in that density. And I honestly believe that is the clause that's causing the problem here. There's also 11 criteria that the board has to be satisfied on, including suitability, net positive fiscal impact, future municipal services, won't create undue hazards, adequate and appropriate public infrastructure, compliance with environmental laws, adequate buffers, continuity of open space, architectural design review, no unreasonable impacts. After all this, you then have to go to the site plan review, which has a whole nother layer. So it's not a task for the faint of heart. This system has checks and balances in place. The aberration was the case I had, which was obtained by a variance from the beginning, back way in the day, because of the unique location of this property. The system has worked. The planning board has maintained the balance. Of all those provisions, as I say, I think we can agree what's driving the legislation and why. 2024D2D says residential use as permitted within the PUD district. 204D4D says proposed planned unit development uses, which are residential, shall be controlled by requirements of section 15, PUD ordinance. But E, as I just read to you, gives this up and down flexibility. That's what really the controversy was in the case I handled. And that's what I see as the issue of concern among the planning staff and some members of the town and even of the planning board, frankly. My suggestion and my recommendation is not to throw the entirety of the ordinance out, but to hone in on what the issue was. I suggest the proper amendment would be to delete that subsection E and remove that flexibility so that everyone has to come in, either get a variance from the zoning board to have greater density than is allowed under the PUD, or meet the density requirements of the PUD. So you're still giving the planning board the flexibility to adjust within, and the mixed use is still going to be mixed, but it's now defined as, it's not going to be, could be 5 units or could be 500 units. It's going to be, what is PUD density allow? And your PUD, you're not throwing out. So you have it in place, you have the regulation in place, and I urge you not to have a knee-jerk reaction to, let's just remove all of the mixed use. You have mixed-use projects in this town. They're going to be drastically affected by this change in legislation. Their financing is going to be affected. Development in those projects is going to be drastically affected. I think if you remove E, you've removed that disastrous situation that might be of concern. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Is there anyone further who would like to address the council?
Hello, Ashley Tenhafe, 75 Shelburne Road. I live in the Webster Green community across the street from Flatley. And I'd like to say that I'm very much approve of the decision that this board has made to take another look at this. I have been at Webster Green for almost 7 years now. I am at every single planning board meeting that Flatley comes up to, constantly arguing the different uses that they're doing, the different changes that they're doing. And I'd like to see some sort of, I don't even know, some sort of control taken away from the planning board. None of these projects ever come back and are actually built the way that the planning board approves these. And it's frustrating. And as homeowners and abutters, we bring up our concerns constantly about these mixed use developments, and we're poo-pooed. Our concerns are not taken seriously. We are shuffled off to the side and nothing's ever done. We make a concern, the developer comes back and goes, oh yeah, we can fix that. And then it never gets voted in as a condition for that CUP to then follow. And then that developer comes back later on and goes, oh, no, we didn't say that. Or, no, we're not going to do that. Or, you know what, you residents are being a pain in our butt, so we're only going to do exactly what the vote was for us to have to do. It's frustrating, it's exhausting, and it's downright aggravating. So to have some sort of, I don't even know how to say it, to basically have the planning board not have this giant power to allow all of these changes and make them actually have to possibly listen to people. We're not the only ones that are angry and frustrated with all these CUPs. This is not the town I grew up in. I've been here since I was little. My dad grew up in this town. This is not the town that we grew up in. Having these CUPs everywhere it's demolishing the town that we had. And these builders have way too much control to make all these giant changes. And then there's nobody actually watching what they do. The number of times that we have had to call the town and be like, they're not following their CUP. What are you guys doing about this? And then to have to make those reports and then to go back to the planning board and have the planning board go, oh, that's fine, they'll fix it later. It's not the way this was supposed to be. So to have that other part where they have to go to the zoning board, and honestly, I'd like to see the zoning board put under a little bit more of a microscope as well. Too many things are being let through in this town, and nobody is watching what happens. And it's frustrating. And then to go to a meeting and have the board roll their eyes at you or huff the minute that you come up to say something, because you're there meeting after meeting after meeting. And they're like, oh, they're here again. It's not right. So I love the fact that you guys are taking another look at this stuff. And I hope that this isn't the only thing you guys are going to look at. I hope that more stuff gets looked at when it comes to the CUPs, the planning board, all of that. Because us residents, we're angry. We can't get enough people here because they don't feel listened to. They go to a meeting, they get eye rolled, and then they throw up their hands and go, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to change. And that's not the way that this town should be.
Thank you very much. Anybody further would like to address the council?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bernard Plants. I'm with Edgebrook Heights LLC, 179 Amherst Street, Nashua. Before I start, I think at the beginning, opening this public hearing, it was mentioned that section 2.024 was being deleted. But what was not mentioned, I just want to confirm that this is the case. A paragraph was added to section 2.02.4 about modifications to CUPs. Is that still the case?
Yes, D has been deleted and there is a paragraph, as attorney has mentioned, that as previously approved mixed-use conditional use permits, CUPs that existed at the time of this section being repealed shall be subject to requirements of the former section 2.024.d as existing in the zoning ordinances revised as of January 14, 2021. Any proposed modifications or amendments to those previously approved CUPs shall be required to comply with the requirements of the underlying zoning district they are located within and/or with the provisions of section 9 of the non-conforming uses.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. In August of 2006, Kevin Slattery, a Nashua-based builder, and I formed a company called Edgebrook Heights LLC, and we acquired from the Gutierrez Company from Burlington, Mass, a 32-acre piece of property, formerly part of the National Corporation campus. It's the very south end of Merrimack, and it abuts the formerly proposed circumferential highway in that area opposite the Harris Pond Shopping Center. Gutierrez had designed and secured site plan approvals for 280,000 square feet of office space they call corporate woods. Gutierrez was relying on the circumferential highway to be built in order to fill that space. It didn't come to pass. A big disappointment for Gutierrez. We're all aware that that stretch of Daniel Webster Highway is a bit of a backwater following the construction of Exit 11 to the outlet malls in Anheuser-Busch. As a result, I think people that used to formerly use Route 3 during the toll period time are now using the highway because it's more expeditious and doesn't cost as much money. And so we have a kind of a unique piece of property in a unique location. Commercial, retail, and office uses typically rely on a vibrant traffic volume. This particular piece of property is zoned I-1, and the CUP permit process was available to us. In 2013, in fact, Mr. Koenig was on the planning board at the time, we secured a conditional use permit to allow a variety of commercial uses, assisted living, and residential uses. So we acquired the property in 2006, 2013. We secure our first conditional use permit. The overhang of the 2008 recession did great violence to the real estate business. It affected our project. It affected a lot of people across the country. And the 2013 permit expired. We had secured as many extensions as were available under the regulations. It was not until 2019 that we were able to secure a new CUP approval for a combination of commercial and multifamily housing, including 76 age-restricted units, small commercial building, and 50,000 square feet of self-storage, which has been built and looks quite attractive, actually. Of the 232 residential units at Edgebrook, I'm informed today by the management company, 214 of them are leased. There are better than 300 residents in the project. The 19 vacancies that do exist are due to frictional movement, that is, people moving in and out. And the bulk of them are in the age-restricted building. There's a 76-unit age-restricted building, which fills at a slower pace than conventional units. They also explained to me, and I asked them specifically because I was concerned, we went through the CUP process, a lot of discussion about what impact a 232-unit residential development would have on the school system in Merrimack. So as Morgan mentioned, there's a series of tests that we have to pass, studies that we have to generate, one of which was a fiscal impact statement. I went back and I checked that fiscal impact statement, and it determined through discussion, Mark Fougier, who prepared the report through discussions with the Merrimack School District, determined that 15 school-aged children would result from the project. The fact is that nearly 100% occupancy of the conventional units, there are 10 to 12 school-aged children that live at Edgebrook. 3 are homeschooled. They are unable to tell me how many of these children went to private school or went to school, not in the town of Merrimack. The self-storage facility, which I mentioned, about 50,000 square feet, is about 70% occupied at this point. I think it looks attractive, and they expect to achieve 90% occupancy by the end of the year. When we acquired the property in 2006, we relied on the CUP regulations for valuation to determine if this industrial property, without a physical New Hampshire DOT curb cut, a faulty sewer system running along the river, and a 60-foot grade change from Daniel Webster Highway to the lowest part of the site, not an ideal industrial site. It would be very difficult to build the type of industrial buildings that are required today and the size of the footprints on a site that has that type of topographical change. The CUP was a way out, an alternative use that we could rely upon for the development of the property. At the time, by the way, there was a 200,000 square feet of vacant space in the balance of the National Corporation property adjacent to us. So it didn't look good. Tough site, 200,000 square feet vacant. We had to come up with a different plan, and luckily the town of Merrimack had available under zoning the CUP ordinance, which allowed this 35 or 36 acre piece of property to be developed. with with a start, a stop, and a restart. For the 18 years that Gutierrez owned the property, the I-1 industrial zoning did not work. It perhaps would have worked if the circumferential highway had been built. As I've laid out, it took us from 2006 to 2019 to line up the appropriate uses to get the project approved. So 13 years, owning the property, suffering through the 2008 to 2014 real estate downturn, twice going to the planning board and the zoning board, in fact, to get the project approved and reapproved. More testing, more engineering, more design changes, constant investment into the project, but we were committed to it. We relied on the town of Merrimack and the CUP ordinance in order to develop this property. The last paragraph of the ordinance is a real backbreaker. The concept that a site plan that underpinned a CUP application prepared 5 years ago, prior to the pandemic, and the resulting sea change in the manner in which people work, cannot be modified without punitive results. This is very damning to the three approved CUP projects. The idea that everything is held rigid to a plan that was developed some years ago and doesn't respect the fact that market changes, that due to market changes and other changes, that modifications to these master plans must be made. Morgan pointed out that you don't do this overnight. Master plans or master CUP projects are built over a series of years and are subjected to the vagaries of the economy and financing and all kinds of stuff. We went in to see Tim, I think it was in May, to discuss the one remaining, actually it's a small 2.1 acre piece of property that we've got remaining in the project that we'd be able to finish it out. It was designed back in 2018 for a 15,000 square foot commercial building. If you're familiar with the project, there's an entryway, the cul-de-sac 400 feet off of Daniel Webster Highway. It's at the end of that cul-de-sac that this little piece is situated between the self-storage space and the multifamily housing. Tim informed us that you guys were considering, the board was considering modifications to the CUP project, and we had to, because of that, we put everything on hold. I'm here tonight because this is the first time I've been able to speak publicly about your proposed changes. We otherwise would have gone back to Tim and gone through the planning board process to modify that, to make a use of that two acre property that makes sense. There is no commercial viability for that piece of property given its location. As a result of the pandemic, there's no demand for office. The demand for retail space is non-existent. Indeed, in large cities like Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, those cities are offering tax benefits to developers to convert office buildings to residential use. I understand that a great deal of residential housing has been added to the town of Merrimack in a fairly short period of time. I don't view it as a short period of time, given the fact that we acquired this property in 2006 and didn't finish development of that piece of it until 2019. We would like to finish the project. We would like some relief from the planning board to make a proper use of that 2 acres that remain and finish. We've relied on the town of Merrimack and the CUP ordinance to get us to the point we are now. We lived up to our side of the obligation. The town of Merrimack lived up to their side of the obligation until this ordinance was proposed. Now it's a big game changer. And we're forced into a position that we got to sit back and wait and see what happens with the ordinance. And then, as Morgan suggested, likely end up before the zoning board, which is not a planning entity. Zoning board grants relief for exceptions and variances and stuff like that from the zoning ordinance. I think that this matter is better reviewed and approved by the planning board. I think they've done a fine job. To this point, the planning board and the planning staff have held us to a very high level. There was a whole lot of documentation, a lot of going back and forth, a lot of review by outside engineering firms to make sure that this thing worked. And when the final permits issued, they were very detailed. And you have to follow those details, you have to maintain it. And if you don't, then you risk violating the CUP permit, and you get in trouble. We stuck to the game rules and followed it, and here we are. My request is for the council to maintain section 2.024D in its entirety, or at a minimum, do not penalize existing CUP permit holders for modifying their design due to physical or dramatic market changes, as is proposed in the new paragraph at the end of the modification that the board is considering. Sorry to be so long-winded, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Plant.
Would anyone else like to address the council?
There's a rock. Sorry. Katie Poirier, 11 Kimberly Drive, also in the Webster Green area. So I am definitely affected with Flatley. So I guess first off is when these guys come, they get an approval for a CUP, but then they jump around. They go from one area and then they go to another area and not completing the full site. Like they have the apartments and then they're like, oh, can we do 2 more? Okay, they get the approval for that. Then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're gonna go over here and we're gonna start building here, disrupting yet another area of taxpayers that, and then they say, oh, we're going to come back and we're going to ask for another exception. We're going to split the lot. We're not going to do anything more here. And we're going to go and start building another foundation. So for another year, another 2 years, we have quiet. And then in another year, they're going to come back and they're going to start building again. So that's really frustrating because they need to start and finish something. They keep coming back with tons of changes, additions to the existing CUPs. Some are adding new projects outside of the CUP without finishing what they started. It's really exhausting because I keep going to multiple planning board, zoning board meetings for these changes. The boards aren't hearing our concerns. They already have their mind set. And again, just echoing what Ashley said, it's really frustrating. As far as what they're saying as financial hardship, how? They're multi-million-dollar companies with lawyers. Here we are as tax-paying homeowners, and we're being, not listened to. We're being told that all these exceptions are valid. I think we really need to have, I'm really happy that you guys are doing this. It really means a lot to the town because, my grandfather lived here, my aunt, my dad, everybody lives here. I've lived here my whole life. So I just feel like you guys are doing right, and I appreciate you guys putting this in force. So I'm in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Is there anyone further who would like to address the council? Seeing none, I do have one piece. Take a couple minutes, but I'll probably read this into the record. This is from Gordon Leedy, who's is with Tie and Bond Incorporated. Dated September 28th. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, I'm providing written testimony to the council with regard to the proposed repeal of the mixed-use section of the zoning ordinance, Article 2.02.4.d. I apologize for not being in attendance, but I have conflicting commitment. I felt it important to reiterate for the record my concerns regarding the proposed amendment that I previously voiced at the planning board. The mixed-use zoning provision was adopted by a vote of the town pursuant to the important goals set forth in the 2013 master plan. The vehicle chosen for implementation was a conditional use permit. This vehicle was chosen in large part to allow flexibility to the planning board in approving these developments based on site-specific criteria showing fiscal benefit to the town and adequacy of public infrastructure. The side benefit was to provide a method for the planning board to weigh benefits and potential impacts on public health, safety, and welfare while avoiding a cumbersome process through the zoning board of adjustment. Over the last decade of implementation, the ordinance has shown a need for adjustment in that it does not spell out with any clarity what expectations of the town are with respect to the mixed uses in a mixed-use project. This leaves the matter up to the planning board and the zoning board of adjustment, with no formal guidance through the language of the ordinance. Importantly, the criteria contained in the ordinance for approval do continue to offer protection to the town from undue impacts of development. Over the years, there have been changes both in market conditions and in the development of mixed-use projects under the ordinance. The reaction to these changes is to reject the concept of mixed-use development and revoke the entirety of the ordinance provision. This action would create significant nonconformities with zoning and would threaten the financing and ability to complete developments previously approved by the town. It would also throw any modification of these approved projects into the ZBA, a result that the zoning ordinance was crafted to avoid. Revocation would also remove consideration of the criteria for approval that currently protect the town from impacts of development. These were brief comments at a previous town council meeting that the town should not spend taxpayer resources on amending the ordinance prior to preparation of a master plan. The preparation and adoption of an updated master plan is at least 2 years away, and zoning and adoption of zoning amendments pursuant to that plan are at best several months subsequent to the adoption of the plan. Revocation of the ordinance would create a void in zoning with millions of dollars of tax revenue at stake for at least the next 3 years. A solution to the issues identified by the council would be to simply adopt a definition of mixed-use development and a range of proposed mixes. That is, no more than X percent residential, nor more than X percent commercial. This would keep some zoning provisions in effect with the appropriate planning board oversight and would be further protection to the town until a more comprehensive revision of the ordinance can be undertaken pursuant to the master plan update. This could also be done at little or no cost to the town. If there is concern with regard to the urgency of the current proposal, the council could table the revocation amendment and consider an alternative amendment concurrently. I appreciate the opportunity to relay my thoughts to the council and apologize again for not being there in person to offer my testimony. Very truly yours, R. Gordon Leedy. All right. If there's no further public input, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing at 8:16. Any comments or thoughts from the council?
I didn't get the gist of that last one, but I'm wondering if Robert Price has had a chance to review the letter from Gordon Leedy at all?
The letter came in at around between 4 and 4:30 today. I printed it on the printer and brought it right here.
Okay. He suggested a recommendation in there of a kind of a half change, and I didn't catch it 100%, and I don't think it's appropriate at this point, but unless we have some guidance from somebody that says that that's something we really need to pay attention to, I'm not prepared to go for that, but I just wanted to see if, but it came in late this afternoon, so nobody's had a chance to review it. It didn't, I mean, it goes against, it sounds like it goes against the guidance that we received earlier from Tim Thompson as our community development director. And so I don't have a real change of heart at this point.
I'm sorry, you said you do or don't?
I do not have a real change of heart at this time. I will say, like I did last time, that I believe that the changes are not based specifically on one development, although that development has changed dramatically from its original presentation. Developments as PUDs up in North Merrimack, developments as CUPs throughout the town of Merrimack have all changed dramatically from what was originally presented and planned. And none of those have come through in any way, shape, or form looking anything like what was presented. We've had people come before the planning board presenting beautiful ideas with outdoor amphitheaters and all these kinds of things, and everybody gets excited. That's a true mixed use. It's a community area. It's things that we want to try and build in our community. And then anywhere from 2 to 5 years later, they come back in and say, oh, we really can't do that. We need to put in more apartments. And I've seen that over and over and over again. And there's probably 5 different developments between all the ones that have been presented here, plus the one up in North Merrimack that was a PUD, where they've changed their commercial or retail building into residential apartments because they came forward and just claimed that they couldn't do what they said they were going to do. I think that the idea that we're trying to present here is to kind of put the brakes on activities until we can sit back and do a thorough review of the whole program. I'm not convinced that a couple of years, when we've been talking about 15 to 17 years of development time, are going to be that dramatic. I think that the cost to the town to try to modify and enhance and improve this ordinance the way it is versus spending that money on the master plan and improving the whole project, I think it's a much better way to spend our money and our time. So I'm in favor of the motion as we've got it, or the program as we've presented it so far, and moving it forward.
I will second a lot of those comments. This was never meant to be about a single property. It's not about a single property. It's about the way that this section of the ordinance has been used to put residential, multi-unit residential apartments in an industrial zone. And it has not resulted in any mixed use. The mixed use that was intended was not envisioned to be apartments and self-storage. And if we continue down this road, we're going to have apartments, and the commercial piece is going to be an ATM. And that was never the intent of this ordinance. And so I'm with Tom. I haven't changed at all. I still think we need to put the brakes on. We need to do a thorough review, do a new master plan. And I think then we could relook at what this ordinance should look like.
Nancy?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that, excuse me, the residents that we've heard tonight, I think, are just representative of the residents that have reached out to us, to many of us, that we hear from often. And I would agree with what both of you have said. And I think even though there are not more citizens here, that support is for a repeal as well.
So what's the pleasure of the council?
I move that we would move this change in the ordinance to a third reading.
Yes, and do you want it on consent agenda, or do you want it on a regular agenda item? Usually we move to a third reading to consent agenda. For
Yeah, which it
ordinances.
could be pulled if somebody feels necessary. But yeah, move it to a consent agenda would be fine at our next meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Tom Koenig, second by Nancy Murphy. Any further discussion on the motion?
Just for clarity, it is to move the repeal of section 2.02.4.d to a final reading and to be placed on the consent agenda for the next meeting.
Right, that's it.
So let me ask a question about that. So we're going to repeal that paragraph.
Feel that section.
Section and add that paragraph.
Yeah, D, right? Section D. Where do we ensure that so that piece that we added to that does not have a letter or number designator? Where do we ensure that
Be the
paragraph?
new D. That would be, then that paragraph would replace as the new D.
So we're
We're repealing D, but we're adding that paragraph as the new D.
Okay. I just want to make sure that is clear as part of the amendment of what we're voting on is we're removing the current language in D and replacing it with that paragraph.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. We're all set. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, 500. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is updates from our legislative delegation. Nancy, do you have anything?
Actually, no, just we're in the process right now of redrafting legislative service requests that we've put in. So they've not yet been assigned bill numbers, and we don't have all our co-sponsors in place yet, but still in process. I think we have up to about 800 LSRs right now, just in the House.
Yeah. All right, and I've got nothing. Did you get anything?
No, I didn't get anything.
No, okay. Town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On October 18th, between the hours 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., the transfer station, highway garage, and wastewater plant will be closed for a training session over a lunch period. South Babuzik Lake Road and Joppa Road will be receiving the base and final courses of payment in the next couple of weeks. Once that is complete, the driveways and side streets will be tied into the pavement. I want to give the council an update on the 800 megahertz system real quick in the broad strokes. Currently, the 800 megahertz system, we are in negotiations with Verizon to utilize a site that they have to erect a tower. We have placed this in the hands of our attorneys. Our attorneys are talking directly with Verizon's attorneys. As of this afternoon, our attorney has not heard back from the Verizon attorney. She is going to reach out to them again. Understanding that this has taken a long process, longer than I wanted, longer than any one of the councilors probably wanted on this. We are moving forward as quick as we can. And I will be bringing in October, second meeting in October, I'll be bringing both the fire chief and the police chief forward to update the council on a full plan of the conversion to 800 megahertz for our dispatching. And lastly, I'd like to kind of talk about social media in a little bit. A lot of things have been put out on social media, kind of that would refer to a service request or an incident that happened or something that needs action by the town. The town, even though we do use social media to get the message out, we do not rely on social media to act upon these requests. If the public, residents, or anybody has a request that needs action, we have a number of ways you can contact us. You can contact us through the website and send an email to myself, and then it will be passed on direct to the departments. You can reach out to direct departments through the website and put in your request that way. In addition, you can always call my office at 603-424-2331, and the ladies in the front office would be more than happy to take down the information and present that to the proper department. I just don't want people to think that because there's a pothole on XYZ road that we're going to go out and fix that pothole on social media. We do not surf social media. We do not look at social media for that. aspect, if there's those kind of issues, please bring them forward through the proper channels through the town, and we will correct them as best we can. Thank you.
About that. I think as a counselor, it's kind of a weird position to be in. I don't get into a debate on social media. I have said, give me a call, that kind of thing. I think we as counselors need to be careful about how we respond to social media. I would prefer that we say, contact town hall, because I think that's appropriate. I have said more than once, I've given up my phone number. If you disagree with anything the town's doing, I'll be happy to sit down and have a cup of coffee. But I'm not going to debate on social media. I just won't do that personally. And so when I think we as counselors need to be cognizant of the fact that we can't get into a debate, because then it looks like we're representing the council. And we can't do that. I mean, I can sit down and have a cup of coffee with you, but that's as an individual. When I'm responding in social media, I really do think there's a hint of we're talking from authority, and we don't have that. I am only one of 7. And I think we need to make sure that we delineate that and we're cautious on how we respond. That's just my opinion.
Great point. Andy, yes.
Can I ask a question about the 800 megahertz? This is the second, or should I guess I should ask, we have 800 megahertz up and going in the town of Merrimack currently.
That is correct.
Do you, without this new tower, what do we know what percentage of the town is currently covered by that 800 megahertz system? I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
I do not have that answer for you. I believe we'll have that answer for you when we come forward in October. It's
Okay.
very difficult because there are certain sections in town that are in a bowl
Yeah.
that the 800 megahertz system it doesn't work through.
Yeah.
And there's other areas that when we did our tests, they were great, and now they're not as great as what they used to be. So we're working through a lot of issues. What we've been told by Motorola and by others is that if we do get this tower where it's located, that will significantly improve our 800 megahertz system. So we have backups. We still have our V channel, and the police still use digital. So we do have backups. It's not just we're 800 megahertz or bust.
Yeah.
So there are backups.
I wanted the public to know that it's not that we haven't made any progress on the 800 megahertz system. We have made progress. We probably haven't made the progress we wanted. And this last piece is what's holding us up for the final solution.
And one other thing is that we did receive a grant from the federal government to help us with the 800 megahertz system. We do have money set aside. We already bought our building to house all our communication gear. It's just right now we're in the negotiations with a corporation, and we're trying to get that paperwork signed, I's dotted, T's crossed, and we sign and then we'll have to build it. And it's not going to be built overnight, but at least we'll be moving into the next phase, which is the construction phase. And hopefully it'll be quicker. And trust me, I wanted it 4 months ago, a year ago. I think we all did. And it's just been a slow process of getting together with the corporation. And actually, once we got the attorney involved, it seemed to move things along a lot quicker. So hopefully she can work her magic and get this resolved in the next week or so, or next month or so, and we can start the next phase of the 800 megahertz system process.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. Move on. There's nothing on the consent agenda nor old business. So under new business, item 1 is the council consider the confirmation of the appointment of the new community development director pursuant to Charter Article 7, Section 8. Council had an opportunity to chat with Robert Price this evening that Paul had brought forward to us. He's been with the town for, I think we figured 8 years at this point. And Paul?
Yes. I'm happy to bring Robert Price forward for the new Community Development Director position that's been vacated by Tim Thompson leaving us. Robert's been in the town of Merrimack since 2015. He's pushing 9 years with the town of Merrimack. Before that, he was an assistant planner up in Raymond. He has an extensive planning background through the towns and understands the town of Merrimack and the planning board and our regulations and our ordinances. And I believe he'd be a valuable asset to the town, and I'm happy to recommend him to the council as the next community development director.
Great. So, Nancy?
I don't think there's any, I'm very comfortable, and I think we had the opportunity to ask questions and ask opinions of Robert prior to this meeting and what his vision is for the future and ideas he has. So I'm really comfortable initiating a motion.
Please do.
I would like to make a motion to confirm the appointment of Robert Price as the new Community Development Director pursuant to Charter Article 7-8.
I'll second.
Motion by Nancy Harrington, seconded by Mackenzie. Any further discussion on the motion?
I just want to say real quickly that I agree with Nancy that Robert's been here, he's been doing the job, he knows the town very well, and he's shown his competence, and we're happy to have him. I'm happy to support him in his new role.
Great. All right. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposition or abstention? 6-0-0. Welcome, Robert. Congratulations.
Be careful what you ask for, Robert.
You don't have to. You don't have to. Very good.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Okay. Sorry, Pat. Next item under new business. The council to consider the acceptance of recommended changes to Chapter 193 Welfare Guidelines of the Merrimack Town Code pursuant to Charter Article 5. Hi, Pat.
All right. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Don't take it personal. Everyone left as soon as you said it.
I know, really. It was like, all right, I guess welfare guidelines aren't as interesting as other zoning and other things. So, although sometimes I'm glad of that. So.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So this evening I'm here because there was recommended changes that I wanted to bring to the council to keep our guidelines updated, which is doing our due diligence for keeping within the law that we have to work within. So one of the changes is a law that was just signed by the governor, and it actually became effective on September 26th. And this really just clarifies some residential issues that we have when people are moving from place to place, and the law in itself is very vague because it kind of says whenever a person is there, whether they're a resident or not. So because of that vague part, the New Hampshire Local Welfare Association actually adopted years ago what we call Good Neighbor Agreement, and then eventually called it Ethics Agreement, and then the legislature brought it forth as something to put into law to try to make sure that all communities are following some of these. So the language in here sort of follows that. So we took what was in the law, we had our lawyer review, and so really it's just effectively putting that piece of the law in the guidelines. So that's the first amendment change, and that's on page 16. And then the other changes, the second one on the second amendment would be on page 26 and 27. And this is basically just as requirement of our guidelines, we have to, when we determine eligibility, there's certain criteria that we use to determine someone's eligibility. And the thing is, we have to put in certain amounts of criteria, allowances, like for rents or mortgages, for food, for other basic needs like electricity, heat, things like that. So one of the things is we have criteria that allows us to update these things on a yearly basis, so we don't have to worry about our guidelines becoming outdated. The one thing we didn't really have was something that updated our what we call personal maintenance account. It was a very hard one to do because there wasn't something that we could follow easily or find a criteria that was used that would be considered that authority. Like for rents, we use New Hampshire fair market rents for our rents, but this one we don't have anything really to bite on and find something. So what I was talking with other welfare directors, and we're in the same problem because in this happening is inflation has happened, and so other than coming back to you yearly with trying to update this guideline or the personal maintenance guideline, this is like for soap, shampoo, laundry detergent, toilet paper, paper towels, non-food items, then this would be something that I would have to come back every year to try to update. So instead, I decided to put it in with the Consumer Price Index and actually update it every year using that. So that was my recommendation to do that. And so what I would do is take the last recommendations that we had back in 2001, take the 2-year criteria and then update it for the percentage for this year starting October 1st. And then I would use it every year to update it based on what that percentage would be.
Sweet.
So that was the recommendation there. And there's 2 lines in that. One is that, so we'd go basically for that 2-year difference, it'd be $13 per week to $14.37 per week, and every additional person going from $5 a week to $5.53. So that becomes accumulative. So like the first person gets this, and then each additional person in the household, that amount gets added on. And that's how it's determined of their personal care allowance that we use to determine eligibility. So that was my recommendation for the personal care recommendation, to increase it so we could have that adjusted every year. The third criteria was based on the telephone allowance. I used to always use what a residential phone cost was, and it's still hard to do that, but there are criterias I found with the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Service SNAP allowances. And so, like, for example, right now ours is $35 per month allowance for telephone. Theirs is $37 right now, and their new criteria will come out next on October 1st. So this would be a recommendation to keep our allowances sort of going forward in that respect, because that's one that's determined every year. And number 4, the amendment that I'm requesting, this one is a harder one. I can't find anything to sort of go along with every year other than the fact, all right, what are businesses charging and what do I have to fight with them every year, or fight with them every time I talk with them about staying within our maximum allowance. So right now our cremation allowance is at $1,000, and so every time I have a cremation, I have one organization that does the maximum of it. They're at 1,100. So I'm always saying to them, well, I can only pay 1,000, and then we'll fight back and forth, and they eventually let me have it. But it's just a battle all the time. So, in talking with other welfare departments, they've increased theirs to adjust it. Now, it doesn't mean we always pay that. I just had to pay one, and that was $940 and that's what they were charging us, which was below our $1,000. So I was happy to pay that.
You
below.
didn't say, hey, I have 1,000, I'll give you that.
Yeah, I didn't say that. But, so basically, those are the 4 recommendations I'm bringing forward to you, just to, like I said, bring our guidelines up to be current.
Very good. Thanks, Pat.
And the last time we changed these was back in 21, is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
2021.
Okay, great. Looks good, thank you.
Yeah, that does.
All right. Nobody has any questions?
And I think the CPI is really
Makes it easier.
legitimate
Yeah.
method by which to do it too.
Somebody like to make a motion? Do we need them?
Move to accept the recommended changes to Chapter 193 Welfare Guidelines of the Merrimack Town Code pursuant to Charter Article 5 as presented tonight by Pat Murphy.
And I'll make a second.
And move to public hearing.
Is this a public hearing?
This is the first read.
Oh, we're moving it
It
to a
says
public
right there,
hearing.
yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we're moving it to a public hearing.
Oh, move to, I move to
And-
move the acceptance to public hearing.
It's staring me in the face. I didn't even read it. All right. And Mackenzie made the second. Is there any further discussion? None. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? It's 600. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us tonight.
Have a good night, Pat.
Item number 3, under new business, council to review and consider the approval of the town's investment policy.
Which we do every year.
Which we do every year for the investment of public funds held by the town treasurer. In accordance with RSA 35:9 and RSA 41:29 fiscal year 2023-24.
Adam sends his apologies, but his brother is turning 40, and they're having a surprise gathering for him this weekend. And as most of you know, Adam's not from around the area originally, so he has to travel to be with his brother's 40th birthday. So it leaves you with the second string.
Make it fast, second string.
That's it. We do this investment policy every year.
Yeah.
Just want to let the people of the town of Merrimack know that our funds are 100% collateralized in banks. By being 100% collateralized, we do not get the highest amount of yield on our money. But as you'll see in the next presentation, we do get a lot of interest for our money.
Now.
Now, yes, before it was
Finally.
low. But we are 100% collateralized.
I
This
know.
has been in place for, I want to say, at least 20, 25 years. This policy, it works for the town of Merrimack. It tells us what we can deposit in uncollateralized funds, what we have to deposit in collateralized funds. We look at banks to make sure they're solvent. We look at a lot of different things, and we have turned banks away from the town of Merrimack that has offered us higher interest rates, but their ratings through our system, through our little program, were not high enough for us to even try to invest any money with them. So we have downstairs, the treasurer and the finance director have done a great job looking at and protecting the funds for the town of Merrimack. I just ask you for your favorable to approve this. Once again, this is one of those functions that the auditors love to see every year, that the council has reviewed
Reviewed it.
investment policy.
Housekeeping.
Any questions for Paul? No? Somebody like to make a motion? He said, Paul, don't drag your feet. And what are we doing?
And here we
Dragging
are,
our feet.
dragging our feet.
I will make a motion that we approve the town's investment policy for the investment of public funds held by the town treasurer in accordance with RSA 35:9 and RSA 41:29 for fiscal year 2023 to 2024.
Motion
Second.
by Mackenzie, second by Tom Koenig. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? 600.
Now he has to do the official.
Now, next on the agenda under new business, MS 434 update.
It's been a while since I've been on this side.
Yeah. It'll come back to you.
Yeah.
So tonight, as part of the tax rate setting, is that we have to set the MS 434 is the revenue section of the tax rate setting discussion. We need to go through, and the RSA gives us some time to review our revenue projections that we do during the budget process to see if we're going to be hitting those revenue projections. I want to say there will be one change from what you received in your packet. Automobile registrations. We were planning on reducing that $200,000. As of last week, it looked like we were going to have to reduce it. As of yesterday, I asked Diane Trippett for what we have received from July 1st through yesterday, and we're right around $1,500,000. We're right on track for $5,625,000. I asked Diane because, like her and like many of us, you don't see a lot of those temp plates driving around town with cars. It's the influx of the people having to register their vehicles from the apartments.
Increased population.
Increased population. So we felt that the $200,000 that we were going to withdraw from that revenue, or reduce the revenue by, we felt that we are still good at $5,625,000. So that's not on the list. You'll see that in February, March, we were projecting $700,000 for interest. We're revising that to $1 million, or a $300,000 increase. Dump fees, same thing. We talked about increasing dump fees and things last winter. We're seeing an increase in that. We're increasing that $80,000. Current use tax, a lot of the land has been built out. We don't see a lot of new developments moving in through town to use that, so we're reducing that by $75,000. Other income, we're increasing that $40,000. We felt that through tax deeding and other things that we have done this year, that we're going to hit that number. And a matter of fact, we did hit that number this year already. For that, building permits, with buildings slowing down and the rates being a lot higher, we felt that reducing it by $25,000. A highway block grant, that's a number that comes from the state. They gave us the numbers. It's roughly a $10,000 increase. I raised the rent on our billboard to $10,500 a year from $7,500. So there's your $3,000 there. Rooms and meals is a to be determined. We won't know that until they set the tax rate. All indications is that we'll be right around the $2.3, $2.4 million range. And then railroad tax, it went down a little bit. Net total increases the revenue was $333,000 estimated. So undesignated fund balance, looking at our undesignated fund balance, which is also another component of the tax rate.
What was the total? I'm sorry.
Increase in revenue?
Yes.
Around $333,000.
Not on the list.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, got it.
Yes, because of the 200.
And I have to go old school because this isn't on. Is there a
Can you
switch? to
turn
this?
it on?
There's a.
Oh, I didn't know I could do that. Okay.
Got it.
This was fine.
Details.
We'll let that go because of the hour.
Wasn't turned on for us.
Note to self, make sure monitors are turned
It's not
on.
a flip monitor, you just turned it on.
At
So,
least I haven't been listening.
You haven't scratched it out with your marker line.
I tried to move it.
undesignated fund balance at the beginning of the fiscal year, last fiscal year, was $8,979,000. We had increased the fund balance due to excess revenues of almost 1.2 million. An increase for unexpended appropriations, about $1.7 million. Granted, there was a lot of openings, but also that grant, because you were putting $700,000 aside for the grant for the 800 megahertz. Once we got the grant, that money was flowing right through unexpended appropriations. We did not spend that money on anything else. And then we were using fund balance of about $1.3 million. So we had an increase in fund balance of $1,600,000. Our new fund balance as of 6/20 6/30/2023 was 10,586,000. In 23-24, we're using about 2,384,500, which is a projected fund balance of about $8,200,000 for the end of June 2024. And looking how we spending down the fund balance, because we want to be around that 5% mark. Right now, we're a little bit higher. We're at 10, over 10. We have that between 4 and 8%. So we're trying to spend it down reasonably. We're going to use about 984,000, and the 1,400,000 was for the new gas station pumps over at DPW. That's that 2,384,500 reduction. And then next year, of course, looking at projecting 2024-25, using that same 984 for just property tax relief, and then using another $2,140,000 for capital projects. If the council so deems to bring back the safety complex or another building or some other project that they want to see go forward once we do the capital reserves in CIP and capital reserve funds in November. That's what I'm planning on, about $2,140,000 for a project to help reduce that cost of the projects. That'll bring us down to about $5 million, and then we'll be right around 5% at the end of 2025. With that said, looking at our tax rate right now, when we did the budget back in February, I was estimating $4.11 increase, with appropriations of 41 million, revenues of 20 million, tax overlay, property tax relief of the 2.3 million because of the project and because of the 984. And then vets exemption went up, and what the veterans exemption went up, and that was basically a penny on the tax rate because it increased from the prior year, is roughly $4.13. I have a couple.
A minute ago, you said an increase of $4.13 for the year. That's not what you meant.
No, sorry. Municipal tax rate will be $4.13, an increase of 27 cents. Sorry. Told you, it's been a while since I've been in
You're
this
going to
seat.
give us a heart attack here.
No.
27 cents is enough.
27
enough,
cents.
yeah, but 4.13 was gonna
I
floor
do have an option for the council to consider to get that back down to the $4.11. We do have a very healthy fund balance. I could see us increasing fund balance by another $100,000, sorry, another $100,000.
Taken from the fund balance.
Taken from the fund balance. So fund balance used, property tax relief from fund balance would be $2,484,500. And if you do that with that extra $100,000, the tax rate would be at $4.11. Still giving us a healthy fund balance, knowing that we're going to use some of the fund balance in next year's budget to offset potentially a capital project we're bringing forward or a bond issue we're bringing forward to help reduce that down.
Can we go back to the previous slide? Can we go back to the previous slide for a second?
Sure.
So in the budget you're about to come forward with, you're going to request about 2.1 million of capital projects out of fund balance, which is going to bring us down to 5%.
Yes.
What's the recommendation for fund balance?
Between 4 and 8.
4 and 8.
The council has always been happy around 5 to 6%.
I don't think I've seen it in 5 to 6% in my time. I think it's always been.
No, it's always been much higher, and we've been trying to bring it down, but because of the interest keeps going up, and because of car registrations have been surpassing what we've had estimated in the budget.
That's kind of a good problem to have, though.
Yes.
And
What are the pros and
we've
cons to
also
that?
gotten used to being able to use some of the fund balance for taxes. And there's gonna come a day where we're not gonna have that.
And we're using about $1 million a year
Right.
in property tax relief.
So if you take that off, right now we have the option, but if you take that off, that has a significant impact.
And that's always been my concern, but I've
Exactly.
been concerned about that for probably 8 years now.
Right.
And we've still not hit that point.
It might come,
I'm-
but that's up to.
But it's going to come next year if these numbers, I mean, he's talking about $6 million out of
Yeah.
Right, and then when
reserve
it
funds.
disappears, we
and-
can't use
and
it for that anymore.
Reducing
I mean, the-
taxes
The
and-
2.1 for capital projects next year is a big number.
Well, and the 3 million for reduction of the fund on reserve balance.
Right.
Right. That's next year, but have to see when we start putting together the budget, have to see how we're doing with
Right.
appropriations and
And
revenues.
modify that perhaps.
And we'll modify that.
You're
budget.
saying you don't want to do next year's budget now? Is that what you're saying?
Unless you tell me I'm good.
Please, no.
Andy, unless you tell me I'm good, I'm all set. No. And I hate to say this, but we are on the 27th of September, so we're going to be talking in the next
budget
two
soon.
meetings about budget. And it's, and we'll start talking about some of that stuff. So, but where we are is we have a healthy fund balance. This is what I'm projecting. As always, as we get closer to presenting the budget and the capital improvement plan,
It'll be more clear.
it will be more clear as to what we're going to do in the out years. But this is my goal, to get fund balance down. I don't want somebody thinking, oh, $10 million, give me $3 million off, and then we get that
Right.
EKG tax rate that
Yeah.
we've been trying to avoid.
And 100K gets us back down to 411.
Yeah, $100,000 gets us back down to 411. It's about $50,000 for every $50,000. It's a penny on the tax rate.
But that's before we talk about the budget.
Next year's budget. Yeah, but right now we're talking about trying to set this year's tax rate, which the
Oh,
tax
I'm
will
sorry.
be due in December.
Okay, gotcha. Yep,
So we're looking at if our portion would be around $4.11.
yep, gotcha.
Okay.
Does that require a motion?
Yes, it does. It does require a motion. The motion what I would need is for the town council to approve the use of $2,484,500 of unreserved fund balance to help offset property tax.
So moved.
Second,
Motion by Nancy Murphy, second by Nancy Harrington.
Nancy squared.
Nancy squared. Any further discussion?
Oh.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. 600. Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you.
Hmm?
Yeah,
Strong endorsement?
and
No,
It is.
Okay, approval of the September 14th minutes. Anybody have any modifications?
No. I'd like to move the minutes of Thursday, September 14th, as written.
Second.
Motion by Nancy Harrington, second by Tom. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? I was just getting ready, I didn't see the M, I just saw Murphy, and I was gonna say, oh, you weren't here. Thank you, Mackenzie.
watch the meeting?
5-0-1 with Mackenzie abstaining. Comments from the press, no one's here, no to the public, comments from the council.
Nancy.
Oh, thank you. I just have a sort of a bunch of announcements that I wanted to mention. One was just to mention that some town councilors and state reps were able to attend on September 16th. Long-term resident and community volunteer Anita Krager was recognized and honored at a ceremony and banquet at Camp Carpenter. There were a number of family, friends, Boy Scouts, state and local officials, and as many people know, Anita's devoted her life to service and is well known for her timeless devotion to the Scouts for over 50 years. The Merrimack Historical Society, her faith community, and local community improvement projects, which way too numerous to mention. We want to just congratulate her and thank Anita for her lifetime of service and positive impact on the lives of countless New Hampshire citizens, and how great it was that Camp Whippoorwill has been renamed Camp Krager in her honor. So that was a great and very well attended event. So congratulations to Anita. Other announcements that I just wanted to mention was The MVD on this Saturday is having an open house from 12 to 4 on September 30th at Wells 2 and 9, the treatment facility, which is located at 20 Berry Lane. The public's invited to tour the facility, speak with professionals regarding the PFAS treatment process, and enjoy some refreshments. So I know we'll be stopping by there.
20 Berry Lane is off of Continental Boulevard. It's the big warehouse off of Continental Boulevard.
Oh, that goes
right
down.
right before Gentig. So it's right before Gentig if you're coming from.
It sort of goes in and it goes down.
It's down in the hill.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you. No, that's good. Thank you.
That's where the police have their shooting range,
That's right.
which has been very loud lately. Go ahead.
Another announcement, the Merrimack Fire Rescue has their open house scheduled for October 14th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That's a fun and educational opportunity that was really well attended last year.
Yeah.
It's located at the Central Fire location on Daniel Webster Highway. They have life support demonstrations, the arson dog, fire engine, and ambulance tours, and all kinds of other things. And the last one is just a request for people to consider making a donation to Wreaths Across America, which will be held again this year on December 16th at noon at Last Rest Cemetery. That's remembering, honoring our deceased veterans and the laying on of wreaths. So that's on the December 16th at noon. And I know Jen DeFelice is spearheading it again. And certainly that's on social media, how if anybody would like to purchase a sponsor a wreath, I think they're $17 this year. That would be great because I think there's
She needs a little over 600.
I think 650, and I
She
think we're at
has a
two
little over
something.
200.
Right.
yeah.
So we could really use some help. So that's it. Thank you.
Make it placed in every cemetery. Not just that.
And the fire open house, no, I'm sorry, not the fire, but the police open house is the week before the fire? Or?
They're back to back, and I don't know which one comes first. I think police and then fire. Yes.
Okay, so if fire's the 14th, it would be the 7th?
I believe they're doing it on a Saturday.
Wasn't it in your manager report?
No, is it?
is that in
No, they didn't put that. They didn't give me the announcement. They've told me that they were back to back. I will find out and I will send out a message and we'll make sure that it gets posted on our Facebook page.
Excellent.
It's in the minutes from the last meeting.
October 21? For,
So
for
it's
the
the week
police?
after.
The week after.
So it's, okay, yeah, it is. I knew I'd seen it somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that, Mackenzie.
And I wasn't even here, so.
Watch the meeting.
I did.
That's even more pitiful.
Yeah. No, I did. All right. There's nothing further.
Motion to adjourn?
By Nancy Harrington.
So
That-
moved.
Second by
Second.
Mackenzie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained, 600. Thank you, everybody.